Discover the incredible reason I walked into court. The judge was left amazed and transformed. As Sarah Thompson stepped through the heavy courthouse doors, a wave of unease washed over her. The faint click of her heels against the polished floor echoed the pulse of doubt in her chest. What was she doing? A once promising attorney turned homemaker, she could almost feel the judgment of her former colleagues prickling at her back. They barely looked up, but their whispers and sidelong glances were louder than any courtroom gavel. Just a mother, someone would likely murmur. What does she think she can do? Her father's life hung in the balance. The memories of high-stakes defenses and triumphant victories surged. But those moments were ghosts haunting a life she had chosen to leave behind. Now, as she shuffled toward the witness stand, she couldn't shake the fear that this woman was nothing more than a shadow of her former self, a facade crumbling beneath the weight of responsibility and indecision. Could she still wield the sharp blade of logic and rhetoric? Or was she forever trapped in the role of caregiver, forever reduced to a whisper of who she once was? Her heart raced through each step, the air thickening with unspoken expectations. She glanced at the opposing counsel, a sharp-suited predator smirking as if he could already taste victory. Each moment in that stifling courtroom felt like an uphill battle. Memories of her old self flickered, how she fought for clients who needed her, how she relished the thrill of the chase. But now she was just a relic, clutching a fraying resume with precious little faith in her own capabilities. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The trial dragged on. Her meticulously prepared arguments felt inadequate against the corporate behemoth mounted against her. Each piece of evidence she presented seemed to drown in a sea of mockery from the other side. Look at her, they might think. Washed up. Just a mother. A fissure opened in her resolve, filling her with desperation and indignation. Would she ever reclaim her purpose? Then, rummaging through her late mother's belongings the night before, Sarah stumbled upon a faded note. Its crumpled edges were soft against her fingers, and the words inside ignited a fierce longing buried in her heart. Courage comes from within. Fight until the last breath. That note, that unexpected treasure, made her feel alive again. Her mother's legacy coursed through her veins, fueling her determination as she recalled not just her father's struggle, but her very own. The judge's gaze shifted, his indifference slowly peeling away as he began to absorb her passion. Unbeknownst to her, he sensed an undercurrent in her voice and conviction, awakening memories of his own family's trials. The tide of the courtroom began to shift, but despair clung to her like a shroud of uncertainty. As she prepared to dive deeper into the case, whispers circulated, sowing seeds of doubt in her mind. Could she balance motherly love and professional duty? The stakes had never felt higher. And just as the air thickened with tension and the judge leaned forward, a shocking piece of evidence surfaced, leaving her breathless in anticipation. Moments teetered on the edge of revelation, as she faced down not just a corporation, but also the ghosts of her own hesitations. Would she find the strength to conquer both the courtroom and the self that had long been dormant? The pounding weight of what was to come loomed ahead, a reckoning waiting to cast its shadow on her journey. With the judge's interest piqued, Sarah felt a spark of possibility igniting within her. She took a deep breath, drawing upon the words of her mother's note and allowing them to bolster her resolve. The bone-deep fear that permeated her skin began to dissipate, replaced by an ember of defiance. This wasn't just about her father anymore. It was about reclaiming her identity, about rewriting the narrative from just a mother to a fighter. As the trial resumed, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She sharpened her focus, channeling years of turmoil into a compelling argument. However, the evidence that had surfaced was a double-edged sword, a game-changer, but one that could backfire. It involved a document that hinted at corporate negligence, and exposing it could endanger both her case and her father's standing. Every instinct screamed for caution, yet this was her moment of truth. The opposing counsel, sensing the shift, stepped forward with an air of predatory confidence. "Miss Thompson," he drawled, "are you sure that wielding this evidence is wise? It can only lead to dire consequences. His tone dripped with condescension, seeking to leverage her uncertainty. She saw the crowd of colleagues, eyes wide with skepticism, each glance a reminder of her perceived inadequacy. Dire consequences, she countered, her voice steady despite the storm inside. What's dire is allowing negligence to go unchallenged. Each word felt like a stepping stone inching closer to the woman she once was, a fierce advocate who fought for what was right, who would not let fear dictate her course. The judge sat forward, intrigued. He could sense her transition. Her passion, once smothered by self-doubt, now surged through her eloquent defense. The room crackled with energy. Sarah could feel the tectonic plates of her existence shifting beneath her feet. But the question loomed. Was she merely a facade ready to collapse with each challenge, or had she discovered a wellspring of strength that could genuinely guide her through this? As her voice grew more resolute, she recalled the cases she had won in her past, where justice prevailed against overwhelming odds. Memories flooded back, late nights, the thrill of crafting an opening statement, witnessing the reactions of those she championed. She closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself in those memories, reminding herself of the attorney she had been. Opening her eyes, she met the gaze of the judge with newfound clarity. "This isn't just paperwork," she insisted. "This is about holding accountable those who seek to bury their wrongs in silence. My father deserves this fight, and I deserve to fight for him." The courtroom fell silent, her words echoing around the room, laden with renewed determination. The judge's expression softened. "You've come prepared, Miss Thompson. Let us see the evidence." But as she presented her findings, two thoughts battled within her. Was this newfound courage authentic or merely a fleeting wave that would soon recede? Could she maintain this momentum once she stepped outside the courtroom walls? As the judge examined the evidence, a tension settled over the courtroom. Shadows of the past flickered in Sarah's mind, intertwining with visions of her future. This case had become an emblem of her struggle, entangled in personal and professional stakes. The decision looming in the judge's hands could very well be the key to her transformation, or the finale of her attempts to reclaim her identity. Before the judge could deliver his thoughts, a figure stepped forward from the back of the courtroom, a face she recognized all too well, the very person she had fought against in her past, a reminder of why she had left the courtroom behind. This confrontation could unravel everything. How would she face the embodied voice of her previous life? The moment trembled with uncertainty, leaving Sarah suspended on the precipice of her journey's next chapter. The figure emerged from the shadows, a striking contrast to the intensity building in Sarah's chest. Her heart raced as recognition assaulted her senses. Emily Parker, the senior attorney known for her ruthless strategies and unyielding ambition. This was the exact person Sarah had vowed to rise above when she stepped back into law. Now, facing her again felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "Sarah," Emily said with a disarming smile, though the glint in her eyes was anything but warm. "Didn't he expect to see you back so soon? Haven't you learned to stay away from toxic environments?" The words cut like a knife, provoking a surge of anger within Sarah. This was the type of psychological gamesmanship that had once pulled her under. But she knew this was a new day. She had fought through her past, wrestled with doubt, and had no intention of letting Emily dictate her path. "Your assessment is wrong," Sarah replied evenly, maintaining a facade of confidence while grappling with the tumult within. "I'm here for what's right, and that's more empowering than any toxicity you could conjure." As she spoke, she felt each syllable grounding her, reaffirming her purpose. But could she truly back up her words when challenged? Emily ignored the barb, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "It's admirable, Sarah, truly. But understand, the law isn't about ideals. It's about winning." She gestured dismissively towards the evidence on the judge's desk. "And that evidence? It's a mere scapegoat for a naive attempt at redemption. You can't win here." Each statement landed heavily, stirring insecurities that had long haunted Sarah. Memories of harsh critiques in the past swirled around her, whispering reminders of every misstep she had made. Was she still that inexperienced girl terrified of getting it wrong? Forcing herself to breathe through the escalating panic, Sarah remembered her mother's words. They were not just about winning. They were about integrity, about confronting wrongs with courage. "You're mistaken if you think I'll back down," Sarah asserted with a determination that felt more liberating than constraining. I'm committed to ensuring accountability, regardless of what it costs me. My father deserves justice. The words struck a chord, resonating deeper than the stinging remarks of Emily Parker. She could feel the weight of her profession settle over her like a cloak, both heavy and affirming. Justice? Emily scoffed, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, gone as quickly as it appeared. Justice is a luxury, and this courtroom. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a veneer of sincerity. This courtroom dines on victory and power. You might be a good lawyer, but your heart is in the wrong place for the game we play. For a fleeting moment Sarah wavered, doubt flooding in like a surging tide, threatening to sweep her away. Was she equipped to navigate this treacherous psychological landscape? But then she thought of the cases she had fought so passionately, for the lives tangibly impacting her every legal move. She couldn't let someone like Emily define her journey. Perhaps you misjudge the strength of heart, Sarah replied, her resolve hardening. She turned her back on Emily and strode back toward the judge, ready to reclaim control over her narrative. The judge, witnessing the dynamic, leaned in closer, a searching look on his face. Miss Thompson, is there something you'd like to share with the court? Sarah paused, the question hanging in the air, heavy with ramifications. Her mind whirled with options, the weight of her past choices pressing close like a dark shroud. This case involved more than just her father's legacy. It held the keys to her own resurrection. If she could wrestle this powerful moment into a stance of authenticity, what could unfold from it? But would anyone truly hear her? Or would Emily's taunts echo in the judge's mind? The path ahead was unclear, and Sarah found herself at another crossroads, a moment that echoed not just potential prosperity, but the ghosts of her failures. You can play games with words, Emily, Sarah muttered under her breath, battling doubt with determination. But I'm ready for the truth. With the judge's gaze piercing hers for clarity, she wondered if she had the strength to let her father's truth guide her through yet another confrontation. The very thought left her heart racing as she braced herself for what her next move would demand. And just then, a note slipped beneath the courtroom door, capturing the attention of every eye. Was it a warning or a revelation? With her breath hitched in her throat, Sarah knew her moment of reckoning had just begun. Time seemed to slow as silence enveloped the courtroom, the room tense with a palpable energy. Sarah's gaze locked onto the note that had slid beneath the door. Every fiber of her being urged her to snatch it up, to uncover its secrets. This unanticipated interruption felt significant, perhaps the very twist she needed in her pursuit of justice. Instead, she remained rooted in place, her focus drawn inward. The judge's piercing eyes bore into her as if awaiting a cue to act. This was her moment, the crossroads she had manifested through her struggle. But was she truly ready? Miss Thompson, the judge prompted, his voice firm yet curious, shattering her reverie. Drawing a breath, Sarah stepped toward the note. With a trembling hand, she retrieved the folded paper and unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning its contents with a mix of trepidation and hope. The words were typed, terse and to the point. Evidence of corruption is hidden in the exhibit. Seek the truth. They are watching. The message filtered through her mind like a rush of cold water, reinvigorating her purpose. Corruption? In this very courtroom? Was it possible that Emily Parker's relentless insistence on power was more than mere bravado? The embers of doubt ignited a flame of resolve within her. Breath steady, she turned to face both the judge and Emily, the impending confrontation looming before her like a gathering storm. Your Honor, she began, her voice gaining strength with each word, I believe it's crucial we investigate further the evidence presented in this case. There may be more at stake than originally thought. Emily's expression shifted subtly, though she maintained an air of superiority. But beneath the surface, Sarah detected a hint of fear. It was a vulnerability she hadn't expected. This is not the place for baseless accusations, Miss Thompson, the judge warned, but there was a flicker of intrigue in his tone. No, Your Honor. Sarah straightened her posture, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through her. It's not baseless. The inquiry I propose stems from the very heart of our justice system, uncovering hidden truths. I ask for a recess to further examine the material submitted, especially if there are implications of misconduct that directly impact this case. Her words hung in the air, thick as fog, and soon the quiet murmur of the courtroom buzzed with speculation. Emily's composure crumbled slightly as a realization dawned. Sarah wasn't just advocating for her father's legacy, but now stood on the precipice of challenging a much larger, darker narrative. "Sarah," Emily faced her directly, the smile from before now replaced with an icy calm, "what you're suggesting is reckless. It's a dangerous game to play. Especially if you're not aware of who else is at the table." For every ounce of intimidation Emily tried to wield, Sarah felt a burgeoning strength. Her recent struggles had polished her resolve like a gem. She was no longer the insecure rookie. This was her trial, and she refused to retreat into shadows. "Maybe I finally learned to play," Sarah shot back, her heart racing with fierce determination. She could see the judge's hesitation, weighing options and the implications of her request. "Very well," he relented, a begrudging respect evident in his eyes. "We will take a recess. But Miss Thompson, let me remind you, be prepared for the consequences of digging too deep." The gavel struck, marking a critical juncture in her journey. As the court adjourned, Sarah felt clarity wash over her like a cleansing wave. This was a defining moment, and she was ready to unearth the truth. But within the recess of silence that followed, questions simmered. Who had sent the note? What did they know? Just as she prepared to plan her next move, she caught sight of Emily stepping away from the court, her demeanor transformed, shadowed by uncertainty and possibly fear. Sarah sensed an impending confrontation. The stakes had just risen, unveiling a labyrinth of deception that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As she pondered the ramifications of her decision, determination surged anew. Was she ready to confront not just Emily, but perhaps an even darker adversary lurking behind the curtain of power? Fingers trembling with potential, she clenched the note tightly. The chase was on, and she knew she had only just begun to uncover the depths of deceit woven into her case. As the gavel fell and the courtroom buzzed with whispered speculation, Sarah felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Each pair of eyes seemed to hold their own expectations, their own narratives about her confrontation with Emily. She stepped onto the brink of what felt like a reckoning, her heart pounding in her chest. Despite the overwhelming chaos surrounding her, Sarah anchored herself with purpose. She slipped out of the court and into the hallway, her mind racing. The note still crumpled in her palm was a lifeline, but also a heavy burden. What did it mean? Who had sent it? And, more importantly, where could she start to unveil the corruption hinted at within its lines? She had once feared revelations like these, but now they pushed her forward. Fear turned into a fierce resolve. In that quiet corridor, Sarah leaned against the cool wall and took a deep breath. Doubt began to creep in, but she quickly silenced it. This was no longer just about her father's legacy. It was about seeking truth in a system that too often hid behind veils of deceit. The fear of becoming embroiled in a battle against powerful figures like Emily had to be pushed aside, replaced with determination. Turning her thoughts inward, Sarah began to envision her next steps. Her recent past had sharpened her instincts and helped her develop skills she hadn't fully acknowledged before. A quick, quiet survey of the courtroom showed that she was not alone. Colleagues and allies were about, many of whom shared her intuitive sense of justice. She approached a trusted fellow attorney, Marcus, who had provided candid counsel in the past. If anyone would recognize the implications of hidden evidence, it was him. Sensing her urgency, he looked up from his notes. "Sarah, what is going on?" he asked, concern etching his brow. "Marcus, I think there is something bigger at play here. I received this note, but I need your help to dig deeper into the exhibit. Can you assist me?" He glanced at the crumpled note in her hand, then back at her face. "What do you suspect? Corruption?" "I think so," she replied, eyes alight with suddenly simmering confidence. "I can't explain it all yet, but if there is truth to what has been suggested, it could blow everything wide open." His approval brought a surge of relief. "Let us take a look then. We'll dissect everything. No stone unturned." They found a secluded area in the building and began poring over case files, the papers, photographs, and notes that had quickly become overwhelming. As they dissected the evidence, however, Sarah frequently felt the haunting eye of Emily looming over her shoulder. The tension was electric. They were not only fighting a battle against the evidence itself, but also engaging in a psychological duel against a formidable opponent who seemed always to be one step away. Through these moments, Sarah unearthed pieces of the truth embedded in courtroom records. Her confidence grew with each revelation. Strategies and scenarios unfurled in her mind as vividly as they did in front of her. But Emily's voice echoed with subtle condescension, reminding her of the dangers of her current pursuit. "It's just a game, Sarah. You need to know who the players are before you risk it," she recalled Emily saying. But wasn't that the point? That was what made this whole ordeal more than a game. The tension fueled her resolve. It was a reminder of how far she had come from the days of doubt. She not only needed to uncover the truth, but to fortify herself against the judgments of others. With each breakthrough, Sarah not only discovered corruption, she also unearthed a renewed sense of self. The relentless pursuit of justice had transformed her. She was no longer an outsider in the courtroom but a steadfast challenger of the status quo. As they delved deeper into the case, an unsettling thought brushed against her consciousness. What if her discoveries put not only her career but her very life in jeopardy? A cold shiver traced her spine at the implications of what she might unearth. But with that realization emerged the firmness of purpose, a sense of agency she reveled in. Just when they were about to organize their findings for the judge's return, a text from an unknown number flashed on her phone. "You're nearing the truth. Be careful. They won't hesitate to silence you." The message sent a cold bolt of fear through her, but it also ignited a new flame of courage. Glancing sideways at Marcus, she knew they were in deeper than she had ever anticipated. As the courtroom doors creaked open and the judge prepared to take his seat, Sarah felt an electric tingle of potential. She was ready, but how ready was she? All of her resolve anchored her as she clutched the note tightly. Awareness expanding, this journey was morphing into a battleground, a proving ground for not just justice, but for her very own strength and conviction. What revelations awaited as the gavel struck again? The fight was just beginning, and the real challenge was not simply about uncovering corruption, but also about facing whatever darkness lay ahead. As the judge settled into his seat and the courtroom murmured to a hush, Sarah took her place at the front. The weight of expectation pressed down on her, a palpable force urging her to summon every bit of confidence she had cultivated in recent weeks. She could feel Marcus's presence beside her, solid and reassuring, instilling in her a sense of camaraderie. Together they would navigate this tempest. The judge's gavel struck, and all eyes turned toward Sarah. The heat of scrutiny was overwhelming, but she couldn't afford to falter now. The notes they had gathered lay spread in front of her, a map through the turmoil she faced. She took a breath, reminding herself that the fight for truth was not merely professional. It was profoundly personal. "Your Honor, I have reason to believe that the evidence presented may not only be incomplete but compromised." Her voice, initially shaky, grew steadier with each syllable. A ripple of surprise threaded through the gallery, and Sarah grasped that she had their attention. But with Emily seated across the room, an unyielding smirk playing on her lips, she knew this was far from over. "Ms. Reynolds," the judge interjected, his brow furrowing slightly. "Are you alleging misconduct?" "Yes, Your Honor." Sarah's heart raced, but she pressed on. "I have unearthed discrepancies in the document trail related to the exhibits. Additionally, I received a note that raised serious questions about the integrity of these materials." She glanced at Marcus, who met her gaze with an encouraging nod. "What does this note entail?" the judge asked, leaning forward. As she unfolded the crinkled paper, her mind raced with thoughts of the unknown sender. This gesture felt both risky and liberating. It insinuates that there are individuals willing to go to great lengths to manipulate evidence for personal gain, she stated, glancing subtly at Emily. "I believe if we further investigate, we may uncover not just half-truths but perhaps an entire web of deceit." The courtroom was silent. Tension crackled in the air, each person weighing the implications of her words. She sensed the doubts that lingered just beyond her reach, but recalling the notes and evidence she had studied brought clarity, and she fought against the tide of skepticism. There was no turning back now. "Ms. Reynolds, if you are suggesting that these allegations are serious, I will need concrete evidence to support your claims." The judge's voice was firm, yet there was a hint of curiosity mingled in the tone. "I understand, Your Honor," she responded, determination surging through her. That's why I request the opportunity to present new evidence that supports these findings. Our pursuit of justice must not falter at the hands of powerful interests. She felt a weight lifting. Articulating her thoughts solidified her resolve. Very well, the judge replied, the air around him shifting. I will allow for a recess to investigate this matter further. You will have the opportunity to compile whatever evidence is necessary and present it at the next hearing. As the gavel fell, Sarah felt a wave of triumph wash over her. This was a small victory but a crucial one, opening doors she had thought tightly shut. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. She had taken the first step toward empowerment. Yet, as she stepped back from the podium, a shadow loomed in her thoughts, one she couldn't ignore. Emily's presence in the room still felt like a threat, and Sarah knew the stakes had just ratcheted up. The tension was palpable, threading through the air like a silent warning. Later that day, in the quiet of her office, the adrenaline began to wane, replaced by a growing awareness of the true complexity ahead. What if her discoveries caused more than professional challenges? Beyond the courtroom battles, deeper shadows lurked, a web of corruption that might ensnare not just her career but her very safety. Her mind circled back to the text warning her to be cautious. She realized she stood at the precipice of something monumental, an investigation that would test not only her professional acumen but her moral fortitude. Recalling her past self, the timid and uncertain young attorney, she felt a surge of pride. She had become a force of change, not just in the courtroom but within herself. This pursuit could reshape her identity, expand her capabilities, and perhaps even define who she was meant to become. But lurking in the shadows was the reality that every choice she made would tangle her further in a precarious spiral. Courage bred growth, but what sacrifices would she have to endure to pursue justice? Sarah's gaze fell on the crumpled note, the one that had propelled her into this chaotic journey. She clutched it tightly, the decision now clear. She would not back down. The ground beneath her was shifting, and she had no intention of losing her footing. As night began to fall, a surge of determination coursed through her veins. She wasn't just searching for the truth. She was prepared to confront everything that came with it. What other secrets lay buried? And who would she become by unearthing them? The next chapter of her journey awaited, and with it, the reality of choices yet to unfold. The following morning dawned with a sense of urgency, the sun barely breaking through a haze that mirrored Sarah's turbulent thoughts. She prowled her office, pacing restlessly, her mind swirling with considerations of the evidence she had yet to gather. Every footfall echoed her commitment to uncovering the truth, yet a distinct anxiety threatened to unravel her resolve. Rushing through her morning routine, Sarah's stomach knotted as she considered the implications of her previous day's proclamation. Would Marcus see the same potential she did? He had been her anchor, yet recent developments complicated their partnership. As she prepared for another day of grappling with Emily's machinations, she couldn't help but reflect on her own motivations. Was her pursuit of justice fueled by genuine idealism, or was it now intertwined with a desire to prove herself against those who sought to discredit her? The tension of the impending court date loomed ahead, and Sarah needed to define her purpose. She had brushed against the harsh realities of law and morality, and now at this crossroads, it was clear she stood not just for clients but for her own right to thrive. The clang of the clock reminded her time was of the essence. Each moment was a chance to shift from timid reaction to strategic action. Arriving at her office, she found Marcus already sorting through their collected documents. Greeted with a warm yet concerned smile, he stepped aside for Sarah. "You're looking determined today," he remarked, glancing at the crumpled note she still carried in her pocket, a talisman of her resolve. "Determined and a little desperate," she admitted, the words spilling forth. "I need to find solid evidence before we can make any further moves. Anything that could back up my claims." Her pulse quickened as she realized the magnified stakes of her inquiry. What if it reveals something far more insidious? "We'll figure it out, Sarah. One step at a time," Marcus reassured her. Still, she sensed an unspoken tension. Was he, too, feeling the weight of uncertainty? Their collaboration resumed in tense silence. Hours became a blur as they pored over documents, meticulously scrutinizing each figure and timestamp, digging for anomalies and signs of foul play. Sarah's focus sharpened with every piece of evidence that fell together, revealing patterns they hadn't previously recognized. As her analytical skills unfolded, it became clear that she was developing a proficiency far beyond just legal interpretation. She was becoming an investigator, able to connect dots that once felt like mere distractions. With each revelation came a deeper introspection. Could she learn to embrace this new role without losing herself? The memories of her former self flickered through her thoughts, whispering doubts that threatened to sway her resolve. But as she unearthed inconsistencies, a new confidence took root. She wasn't simply navigating legal waters, she was charting her own course into uncharted territory. Suddenly, a thought struck her with stunning clarity. She rifled through her notes until she found it. An address scribbled hastily on a half-crumpled page, a potential lead that had easily been overlooked. "Marcus, look at this," she urged as the details ignited a fire within her. He stepped closer, his eyes darting between the documents and the address. "You think this could be connected?" "There's a chance," she replied, her voice vibrating with newfound energy. "If we investigate this place, we might uncover more about the people behind the manipulation of evidence." The prospect of direct action filled her with a rush of adrenaline, yet apprehension loomed. She had crossed the threshold from passive involvement in a case to active pursuit of justice. This was a clenching decision, one that could expose her to further danger, not only in her career but personally as well. As they prepared to leave, the crumpled note brushed against her leg, reminding her of the gravity of their impending discoveries. Each step toward the address felt like a plunge into the depths of darkness, but for that daring to confront it, the glimmer of truth flickered on the horizon. What awaited them in those shadows could either fortify her burgeoning sense of self or threaten to unravel her newfound identity. The knowledge that her journey devolved into a web of deception intensified her anxiety, yet propelled her forward. As they stepped outside, the weight of each choice hung in the air like an unspoken promise. The tactical approach she had begun to embody would be tested under the scrutiny of forces she barely understood. Her fingers tightened around the note, the breath of uncertainty mixing with anticipation. The time had come to confront not only the shadows of others but those within herself. Would she emerge victorious or redefine who she was entirely? The next chapter awaited, fraught with possibilities and danger. The drive to the address was a blur of city streets and anxious thoughts. Sarah watched the scenery shift outside the window but found her mind spiraling inwards. Each block seemed to echo her worst fears. What if they were wrong to pursue this lead? What if it led to dead ends or worse, revealed more about her own shortcomings? The stakes weren't just professional anymore. They clung to her psyche, intertwining her identity with her case. Marcus remained quietly supportive beside her, his focus on the road, but Sarah sensed his own tension simmering beneath the surface. She knew their partnership hung in the balance. With every step deeper into this investigation, she was redefining not only her scope of work, but the dynamics of their professional relationship. Arriving at the dilapidated warehouse, she stepped out into the gritty reality of her quest. The air was laden with the scent of rust and decay, resonating with her apprehension. She turned to Marcus, whose expression mirrored her own blend of resolve and fear. "I don't know what we'll find here," she confessed. "Whatever it is, we face it together," he reassured her again, and this time, his words resonated. The foundation of their partnership felt solid, yet the gnawing doubt of whether she was capable of leading them forward remained. As they entered the building, the darkness enveloped them. Old boxes littered the floor, shadows stretched in every direction, and the oppressive silence weighed heavily. Sarah felt as if she were stepping further away from her previous life, each echoing footfall pulling her deeper into a narrative that could consume or liberate her. They began to sift through the debris, scattering dust that danced like memories on the breeze. Each item unearthed a broken piece of machinery. Discarded papers felt like a revelation waiting to be revealed. They searched for clues, both tangible and intangible. But with each passing minute, the fear of exposure gnawed at Sarah. What if they stumbled upon something dangerous? Something that could irrevocably alter her trajectory? The silence was suddenly broken by a rustling sound that sent both their heads snapping towards the source. A figure emerged from the shadows, visibly startled but defiant, blocking their path. It was a man whose face bore the marks of both age and hardship. "Who are you supposed to be?" he demanded, his voice gravelly, eyes narrowing suspiciously. With an instinctual mix of fear and determination, Sarah stepped forward. We're here to uncover the truth about the operations that have been happening here. We're not here to hurt anyone." The words felt weighty, layered with her growing conviction. His expression shifted, taking her in more carefully. "You think you can take on forces much bigger than you? You don't understand what's at stake." A moment of silence hung between them, then the realization struck her. This man held knowledge. The weight of his scrutiny ignited an urgency within Sarah. "I know what I'm up against. I'm not afraid." Whether those words were truth or bravado mattered little. She needed to project strength. The man regarded her closely, a flicker of curiosity in his expression. "You're either brave or foolish." "Talk then," he said gravelly, stepping aside. "But know there are risks." Sarah's heart raced. The dialogue shifted the dynamic. She was no longer merely reactive but an active participant in this negotiation. She could feel it in her bones. She was transforming. "We're interested in the manipulations that have tainted the evidence against Emily. We believe there's more to uncover, and we need your help." At that moment, she grasped the fragility of her own courage. It wasn't just about gathering evidence, but also about summoning the audacity to confront her fears directly. The man's eyes studied her with newfound respect. A tiny spark of recognition sparked within her. "Things aren't what they seem, lady. Follow me." He turned, leading deeper into the shadowy depths of the warehouse. Tomorrow's courtroom battle loomed larger than life, but now the stakes felt even higher. Sarah was stepping into a dangerous game of revelation and risk, and every choice would define her in the road ahead. Would she merely unmask the take? Or would it have personal repercussions that irrevocably shaped her identity? The tension surged as they delved deeper into the dimly lit corridor. Something monumental was about to unravel, and she was ready to confront the storm head-on. In the moment of truth, she could either emerge as a beacon of justice or succumb to the chaos of her own hidden fears. The man led them through a narrow corridor, illuminated only by slivers of light that seeped through rusty barred windows. Sarah followed with purpose, but a whirlwind of doubt twisted in her stomach. Each step deeper into the warehouse felt like crossing a threshold into uncharted territory, away from the safety of her classroom discussions, and into the intense reality of her chosen path. "What do you know about the case against Emily?" the man asked, his tone shifting from suspicion to an almost resigned curiosity. "We believe the evidence was fabricated," Sarah answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "There are pieces missing, things that don't add up. We need to understand the operations that led to her arrest." He stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "Look, I don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes, but you need to brace yourself. It's not just evidence we're talking about, but lives intertwined in this mess." Those words hit her like a blow. The ramifications of their investigation surged in her mind. This wasn't merely a case anymore. It involved people, real lives altered by decisions made in the shadows. She clenched her fists, fighting back the swell of emotions threatening to break through. "What do you mean?" she pressed, striving to maintain her composure. "What happened?" The man hesitated, contemplating whether to reveal what lay beneath the layers of secrecy. Recognition flickered in his eyes once more, prompting him to exhale sharply. "There are vendettas at play. People doing whatever it takes to cover their tracks. You may not have the resources to combat this on your own." The gravity of his words pushed Sarah to a juncture where self-doubt reared its head again. Did she truly have the strength to navigate this perilous landscape? "What about you?" she inquired, feeling a surge of determination despite her uncertainty. "Why help us? I don't want another person's life ruined." "It's time someone stood up to this," he replied, his voice softening yet charged with conviction. This was not merely business for him. It was personal. As he turned to lead them further into the warehouse, Sarah caught a glimpse of her reflection in a cracked mirror festooned with dust. The eyes staring back were fierce yet tremulous, embodying the duality of hope and fear combating within her. "Strength is born in the fire of adversity," her inner voice echoed. She needed to internalize that truth if she wanted to be a beacon for Emily. In an adjacent room filled with debris, the man beckoned them closer to a solitary wooden table piled high with boxes. "This is where things get interesting. I kept some of the files that detail what really went on." He began sorting through the chaos, unfurling faded papers that told a story of manipulation, misuse, and malice. As he pieced the documents together, Sarah's pulse quickened. Each detail revealed not just facts but patterns of betrayal that twisted the truth. Her mind raced with the implications, and a sense of outrage seeped into her core. The walls around her shrank, and she felt the weight of the situation pressing down like a heavy shroud. "I never intended to get involved in something so dangerous," she admitted, her breath hitching slightly. "But now, I can't just walk away, can I?" "Not if you want to see justice served," Marcus interjected, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. His unwavering support reignited her resolve. The fear of failure dulled in the light of purpose. She could no longer shy away from what lay ahead. It was time to gather her strength, to meld her fear with audacity as they plotted their next move. Sarah glanced back at the man, who had turned surprisingly introspective, almost vulnerable. "You've got it in you. Don't let the fear of what comes next hold you back." Fueled by his words, she squared her shoulders. This was the crucible in which she would mold her identity not just as a hopeful investigator, but as a relentless pursuer of truth. That in that moment, she understood. This journey was no longer about the external threats, but about unlocking her inner power. She was ready to confront her fears head-on. The storm loomed on the horizon, but for the first time, she felt the thrill of anticipation. "Let us dig deeper," she said, and as the weight of her words settled in the air, she sensed a shifting tide inside herself. But just before they could properly sort through the files, the sudden clatter of footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. The exhilarating moment of clarity shattered as dread washed over her again. The stakes had just risen, and the real danger was about to unveil itself right before her eyes. As the footsteps echoed closer, a jolt of adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins. The reality of her situation surged into stark focus. She wasn't merely a mother stepping into the courtroom against insurmountable odds. She was a woman fighting for justice and the truth. The weight of uncertainty had now morphed into a steely resolve, a determination to confront whatever emerged from the shadows. Peering into the gloom, Sarah and Marcus squinted at the silhouette racing towards them. "We need to move," the man urged, his voice laced with urgency. "Now." Without argument, they followed as he led them through the maze of boxes and debris. They slipped into a darkened side room, heartbeats resonating in the oppressive silence. Glistening wood and old metal surrounded them, remnants of lives long unclaimed. As the footsteps drew nearer, Sarah's fear dissolved into a silent acknowledgement of her evolution. She had embraced her role as an investigator, a beacon of courage even in the face of potential danger. This moment was pivotal. It marked not only the potential revelation of corruption but also the transformation of her identity. The man turned towards Sarah, urgency melting into a fierce determination. "If you're committed to bringing this to light, then hold on to that tenacity. One chance is all you may get." She nodded, her heart steadied by his faith in her mission. It was her moment of truth. She was ready to confront whatever awaited them. As the footsteps faded, Sarah took a deep, fortifying breath. "We can't hide. We need to gather what we've found before we flee." There was no turning back now. The stakes were too high, and she now understood the serious implications of their discoveries. Each piece of evidence they had unearthed crafted an intricate narrative that linked directly to a much larger conspiracy. This wasn't just about proving Emily Parker wrong. It was about restoring the integrity of the justice system. With renewed purpose, she focused on the tables strewn with files, maneuvering through the clutter with sharp efficiency. As she began sorting through the documents, snippets of harrowing accounts leapt from the pages. Missing evidence, tampered witness statements, and accusations of systemic misconduct. A pattern emerged, painting a seedy portrait that implicated multiple players. With each revelation, she felt her confidence surge, solidifying her belief that she could instigate change. "Sarah, look at this," Marcus called, flipping through a file that appeared to be the key to unraveling the intricate web of deceit. "This points to discrepancies in the timelines and the people involved." As they plunged deeper into the substantive evidence, Sarah felt a sense of empowerment unfurl within her, a culmination of every struggle she had faced returning to the forefront. In those moments, her journey transformed. No longer a mere shadow of her former self, she had achieved a profound metamorphosis. She understood the weight of her fight. It was not solely for her father but for every individual whose voice had been stifled by wrongdoing. Just then the door creaked open and Sarah's heart raced in response. Peering cautiously around the corner, She spotted two looming figures, the very people they had sought to uncover. At that moment, she knew fear was not a sign of weakness. It was a facet of the courage that had fueled her journey. It invoked action. "We need to go, and fast," she whispered urgently to Marcus. Together, they gathered the pivotal documents, shoving them into their bags with a sense of urgency and purpose. With their hearts pounding, they made their way stealthily towards the exit, navigating the treacherous corridors that held their truth captive as they slipped outside. The light of day washed over them, a reminder of the hope within their fight. The warmth of sunlight felt foreign against the chill of the warehouse's darkness, mirroring her own internal confrontation with fear. She had crossed into uncharted territory, transformed by her embrace of responsibility and courage. Victories were not merely about winning a case. They began with the unyielding pursuit of truth and integrity. Now, as they sped away to devise their next steps, Sarah considered the hurdles ahead. The risks were clear, but so were her aspirations. She had proven something vital to herself. She had reclaimed her identity. She had conquered self-doubt. The next step would require an accurate presentation of evidence to both the courtroom and the judge, but she felt the power coursing through her. It transcended mere legal prowess. With a refreshed sense of self and commitment to justice, Sarah was more than ready to rise to the occasion. Uncertainty remained, but she was no longer afraid. Among illness and struggles, she had become a warrior for change, committed not just to her father's battle, but also to exposing the truth for others wronged along the way. The judge would soon see the depth of her transformation, prompting an acknowledgement that would echo through the corridors of justice. As they drove towards their next chapter, Sarah felt a surge of energy bursting inside her. It wasn't just the thrill of investigation or the adrenaline of fear. It was the assurance that she would emerge resilient and unshakable. She had dug deep and found not only the truth of her father's plight but an unrepentant spirit within herself. Everyone might have initially seen her as just a mother, but she was poised now to demonstrate that she was so much more: a determined advocate, ready to conquer, ready to stand unblemished and victorious in the courtroom of life. Now, more than ever, Sarah knew it was crucial to rally support in her journey. It was time to forge ahead, determined to confront the walls of injustice head-on. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts are invaluable. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support helps us grow, and true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.